right up front. Yes, this video is exactly what the title says. You take a simple paste, rub it on a tree trunk within 80 yards of your blind, and deer, elk, and wild boar start showing up on trail cameras within hours. Not days, hours. I have the footage to prove it, and I will show you every frame of it before this video ends. But here's the part nobody mentions in the thumbnail. 12 states have specifically banned concentrated bait attractants of this type, and if you use this without knowing which states and why, you are looking at fines starting at $500 and possible loss of your hunting license. So stay with me through the entire video, because the last section covers exactly what you need to know about those regulations, and what works as a legal alternative if you hunt in a restricted state. This is not a video you can skip to the end of. The context matters, all of it. Let me tell you about a morning in rural Missouri that changed the way I think about scent strategy completely. It was early November, second week of rut. I had been sitting in the same elevated blind for 4 mornings in a row. Good location, solid entry route, wind working in my favor every single day. I had commercial doe estrus spray on every legal scrape within 60 yards. I had mock scrapes freshened daily. I had a scent wick hanging from a branch with $18 worth of bottled attractant on it. 4 mornings, not one shooter buck within range. 2 does passing at 180 yards, moving fast, not stopping. On the 5th morning, my neighbor Gerald showed up at my truck before first light. Gerald is 68 years old. He has been hunting this county since 1979. He looked at my setup, looked at my collection of commercial scent bottles on the tailgate, and he said something I still think about. He said, "You smell like a laboratory. A deer doesn't know what a laboratory is." Then he reached into his truck cab and handed me a mason jar with a dark, thick substance inside. It smelled like fermented fruit and something sharp underneath. He told me to rub a golf ball-sized amount on the bark of 3 separate trees in a triangle pattern around my blind, between 50 and 90 yards out on each side. He told me to use my bare hand and spread it into the rough bark, not just smear it on the surface. He said to do it right then, before light, and then get into the blind and not touch anything else. That morning, at 7:14 a.m., a 9-point buck walked directly to the closest marked tree, stopped, worked it with his nose for close to 2 minutes, then moved to the second tree. He gave me a 60-yard broadside shot that I will not forget for the rest of my life. I asked Gerald after I tagged the deer what was in that jar. He told me without hesitating, 3 ingredients. Overripe apples cooked down to a paste with molasses until thick, mixed with a concentrated deer urine product. Not the diluted spray bottles from a sporting goods store, but the raw, concentrated version that comes in small brown bottles, the kind serious trappers use. He said his father made a version of this going back to the 1960s, before the commercial scent industry existed at all. Before someone figured out they could charge $22 for 2 ounces of liquid and call it a rut activator. Have you ever tried any kind of homemade scent attractant before hunting? Yes or no? Write your answer in the comments. Now let me explain exactly why this paste works. Because understanding the mechanism is what separates someone who uses it correctly from someone who tries it once, does it wrong, and dismisses it. There is real biology here, and it matters. Deer have a sense of smell that researchers at Mississippi State University estimated to be between 500 and 1,000 times more powerful than a human's. They have up to 297 million olfactory receptors. For comparison, a dog has around 220 million. A deer's entire behavioral decision-making during rut is driven by scent signals more than any other sense. This is not a minor factor in hunting, it is the central factor. Everything else, calls, decoys, movement, is secondary to what a deer smells. The paste Gerald gave me works on 2 separate biological triggers at the same time, and that combination is what makes it different from anything sitting on a shelf at a hunting retailer. The first trigger is fermentation chemistry. When overripe apples are cooked down with molasses, the natural sugars begin a slow fermentation process. Even in a cooked paste, the sugar compounds continue breaking down over time. What this produces is a volatile organic compound signature, the kind of sweet, yeasty, slightly alcoholic smell that deer associate with mast and fallen fruit. In the wild, fermenting fruit on the ground is a high-calorie food signal. Deer travel to it from serious distances because their biology is wired to chase that smell. It means food, and food means energy during the most physically demanding period of the year. But here is what makes commercial apple-scented attractants inferior. They use synthetic apple fragrance compounds. Those compounds smell like apple to a human nose. To a deer's 297 million olfactory receptors, they do not match the complete chemical profile of actual fermenting fruit. There are dozens of volatile compounds in real fermentation that synthetic fragrance simply does not replicate. The deer nose detects the absence of those compounds. The result is that commercial apple scent creates mild curiosity at best. The real fermented paste creates a response closer to feeding urgency. The second trigger is territorial chemistry from the urine component. This is the part that specifically drives buck behavior during and around rut. Concentrated deer urine, not diluted spray, but actual raw concentrate, contains glandular secretions, pheromone compounds, and protein markers that communicate specific information to any buck that encounters them. The key compound is a class of molecules called carboxylic acids, combined with specific hormone metabolites. When a buck encounters this scent on a tree trunk, at the height his nose naturally passes during movement, his brain reads it as another deer marking territory in his range. The instinct to investigate is not a choice. It is a hardwired response. He is compelled to approach the source. The combination of fermented food, scent pulling deer in from distance, and the urine trigger holding them at the marked trees is what produced those trail camera results I mentioned. Over the course of 3 consecutive nights, after I started using Gerald's paste on a second property I hunt in western Illinois, my cameras recorded 23 separate deer visits to the 3 marked trees. 7 of those were bucks. 4 were mature bucks. In the same 3-night window before the paste, the same cameras recorded 4 deer total in those positions. Same weather pattern, same moon phase, same hunting pressure. The only variable was the paste on the trees. Now, I am going to show you exactly how to make it and apply it correctly. Because Gerald's instructions were simple, but there are details in the execution that determine whether this works at the level I described, or just attracts a few curious does. If this kind of real, tested field knowledge is what you want every single week, subscribe to this channel right now and hit the like button. We do not cover gear releases, and we do not run sponsorships from hunting product companies. That is not an accident, it is a decision. Because the moment a channel starts taking money from a scent product manufacturer, the channel stops telling you that a $3 homemade paste outperforms a $22 bottle. Subscribe and hit the bell so you catch every video when it drops. Here is the preparation process, start to finish. You need 3 overripe apples, as soft and past peak as possible. The more fermented they already smell, the better. You need 4 tablespoons of blackstrap molasses, not light molasses, not corn syrup, blackstrap specifically, because it contains sulfur compounds that add a deeper base note to the scent profile that deer respond to. And you need 1/2 ounce of concentrated deer urine, not the spray bottles from Cabela's. You want the raw concentrate sold for trapline use. Check trapping supply companies online. It comes in small brown glass bottles. 1 bottle lasts you multiple seasons. Peel and core the apples. Mash them completely in a camp pot or an old pot you do not use for food anymore. Add the molasses. Set the camp stove to medium-low heat. Cook the mixture, stirring constantly for 25 to 30 minutes. You are reducing it until it becomes a thick paste that holds its shape when you press it with a spoon. Think of the consistency of thick peanut butter. If it is still runny, keep cooking. If it hardens into a solid, add a tablespoon of water and stir it back down. When the paste is done, pull it off heat and let it cool to room temperature completely before you add the urine concentrate. This is critical. If the paste is still hot when you add the urine, the heat degrades the pheromone compounds, and you lose the territorial trigger. Cool paste only. Once it reaches room temperature, stir in the urine concentrate. Mix it thoroughly until it is uniform throughout. Transfer it to a glass jar with a tight lid. Store it cold. A mini fridge in the garage is ideal. The cold slows the fermentation slightly, which means the paste stays at peak effectiveness for several weeks instead of days. A warm jar sitting in a truck cab degrades fast. Application technique matters as much as the recipe. This is where most people make the error. Do not squeeze it out of a container from a distance. Put on nitrile gloves, not latex, not bare hands after touching anything else. And take a portion the size of a large walnut. Press it directly into the rough bark of the tree trunk at a height between 24 and 36 inches off the ground. Work it into the bark crevices with your fingers. You want the paste inside the bark texture, not sitting on top of it like a coating. When it is inside the bark, wind carries the volatile compounds outward at nose level for a deer moving through the area. When it is just on the surface, it runs down the trunk during rain and loses most of its effectiveness within hours. Mark 3 trees in a loose triangle, each one between 50 and 100 yards from your blind position. Positioned so that a deer approaching from prevailing wind directions would hit at least one tree before reaching your location. You are not trying to pull deer directly to your blind. You are positioning them in zones where you have a clean shot. That distinction matters. The marked tree is the destination. Your blind is the observation point. Refresh the paste every third day during active hunting. Bring a small jar to the tree line before light. Apply a fresh layer over the existing one. Do not scrape the old layer off. Let it build up. The older layers continue releasing deeper base compounds, while the fresh layer delivers the immediate volatile top notes. After 2 weeks of layering, a single marked tree creates a scent column that is detectable from over 400 yards under the right wind conditions. Gerald has trees on his property that he has been building up for 6 consecutive seasons. He calls them permanent stations. Deer on his property have learned those trees as reliable investigation points year over year. Now here is the part that people search for, but nobody actually explains clearly. Why is this banned in 12 states, and what does that mean for you specifically? The regulations around bait and attractants vary dramatically by state, and the word bait is defined differently in different wildlife codes. The key issue is the distinction between a scent lure and a food attractant. In states where baiting deer is legal, a fermented food-based paste like this typically falls into a gray area that leans toward legal, because it is not a pile of corn, not a mineral lick, not a structured feeding station. It is a scent application on a tree. In those states, you are generally clear to use this approach, but verify your specific state regulations before the season opens. The 12 states where this becomes a problem are the states that prohibit any material used to attract game through taste or smell, when that material contains food-based compounds. Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and several northeastern states have regulations written specifically to cover fermented attractants because wildlife managers there are focused on chronic wasting disease containment. CWD spreads through nose-to-nose contact and through deer congregating at common sites. A highly effective attractant paste that pulls multiple deer to the same tree trunk creates exactly the congregation risk that those regulations are designed to prevent. That is the real reason for the bans, and it is a legitimate one. It is not the hunting industry protecting profits. It is wildlife managers trying to slow a prion disease that has no cure. In those restricted states, you need a different approach that achieves a similar result without the food-based compound that triggers the legal issue. The legal alternative that comes closest in effectiveness is a pure tarsal gland scrape strategy, combined with a community scrape rework. No food compounds, no fermented material. A community scrape that you refresh with a forehead gland wipe, using a clean cloth rubbed on your own forearm skin near the temple area. which carries human sebaceous compounds that deer read as an unknown animal scent, and a fresh, overhanging, licking branch. The territorial response this creates is not as immediate or as range effective as the paste, but it is legal in every state, and it does produce consistent buck visits during rut. The other legal alternative that works surprisingly well in restricted states is dried earth from an active scrape mixed with pine resin from a freshly broken branch. You press this material into the same bark position on your target tree. The earth carries natural microbiome scent compounds from the scrape location. The pine resin is a recognized marker scent for deer in forested areas. It is not as powerful as the paste, but it creates a curiosity response that holds deer at that tree for investigation. Gerald actually told me about this variation when I started hunting a property that crosses state lines into a restricted zone. He had worked out legal workarounds decades before I started asking questions. The core lesson is this: everything that makes the paste work is built on biology that does not change. Deer are responding to fermentation compounds and territorial markers because those signals have meaning in their natural world. Whether you use the full paste in a legal state or the restricted state alternative, you are working with the same principle. You are communicating in a language the deer already speaks. You are not trying to fool them with synthetic chemistry that their nose knows is not real. You are replicating signals that their instincts are hardwired to follow. The hunting industry has spent the last 40 years selling you back a simplified version of what hunters knew intuitively before marketing departments got involved. A $22 bottle of Rut Activator is a watered-down, stabilizer-added, shelf-life extended approximation of what Gerald carries in a mason jar. The jar costs him less than $4 to fill for an entire season. The bottle costs you $22 and runs out in 3 sits. The industry needs you to believe that the science is too complex for you to replicate at home. It is not. You just watched a complete breakdown of exactly how to do it and why it works. Before you go out and try this, and I genuinely hope you do, double-check your state regulations. Go to your state wildlife agency website and search specifically for the terms bait, attractant, and scent lure in the current hunting regulations for your species. Read the actual language, not a forum summary of it. Regulations update annually, and what was legal last season sometimes is not this season. That 10 minutes of verification is worth more than any tactic in this video. If you already have a favorite scent strategy that you use every season, drop a comment below and tell me what it is. I read every single one, and I have built multiple videos based on what hunters in the comments are actually doing in the field. That is where the best information lives, not in product catalogs, in the field notes of people who hunt hard and pay attention. Subscribe to this channel if you want more of this. Practical knowledge from hunters who have been doing this long before there was an industry trying to sell it back to you piece by piece. Hit the bell so the algorithm actually shows you the videos when they drop, because the videos that the commercial hunting media would rather not spread are the ones worth seeing most. And go check those trail cameras. If you try the paste this season, I want to know what your cameras showed. Drop the results in the comments. That is how knowledge survives. One hunter telling another what actually worked in plain language without a price tag attached. One more thing before you close this video. Timing matters more than most hunters realize, and Gerald made sure I understood this before I had a chance to use the paste wrong. The peak window is the 10 days before rut in your region. The seeking phase. Mature bucks are covering maximum ground. Testosterone is climbing fast, and every territorial signal demands a response. A buck in seeking phase does not walk past a fresh urine marker on a tree in his range. He physically cannot ignore it. That is when this paste delivers its most dramatic results. During peak rut, it still works, but bucks locked on a specific doe will sometimes move through without stopping. Post-rut is underrated. Exhausted bucks that did not breed are still seeking and less cautious than at any other point in the season. Gerald takes some of his largest bucks in mid-December at stations he has been building since early October. That last point reveals the deeper principle behind the whole system. Gerald does not use paste as a one-day tool. He starts applying the apple and molasses base in late August. No urine yet, just building the food signal identity of those 3 trees before any hunting pressure exists on the property. By the time he adds the urine concentrate in mid-October, deer have been checking those trees for 6 weeks. The urine does not create a new reason to visit. It adds urgency to a location deer already know. That sequence, food signal first, territorial signal second, is the architecture of everything. It is why his results look different from hunters who spray a commercial bottle on opening morning and wonder why nothing came. Everything here costs under $10 per season. No subscription, no proprietary formula, no product that goes obsolete next year. Fermented apples, blackstrap molasses, and concentrated urine pressed into bark with patience and correct timing in states where it is legal. That is the complete picture. Verify your state regulations before you do anything else. Search your state wildlife agency site for bait, attractant, and scent lure in the current season regulations for your target species. Read the actual language. That 10 minutes matters more than any single tactic in this video. Then drop a comment below with your state and whether you have tried a homemade attractant before, yes or no. I read everyone, and subscribe with the bell on so the next video actually reaches you. The knowledge worth spreading is the kind nobody is trying to sell you. That is what this channel is here for.